Hey there everybody, I'm Donnie of D3VFX, and this is the second video of 4 for my short tutorial series where I am talking about how to go from start to finish of creating an environment within Unreal that looks a lot like this one. So, to get started, we're going to talk a bit about how we go from Gaea here into something like this in Unreal, or something like this in Houdini. So first, Houdini. Houdini, we're going to throw down a height field file node. And up here where it says file, we can hit this bad boy, search for our file location, and attach it. From there, it's typically going to look very flat. To resolve that, we have the height scale controls right here. The height scale controls, I always dramatize in any software I use, whether that be Houdini, Maya, Unreal, anything else. In this case, I settled on 1300 as being a sufficient number for me to get the height that I would like there. Out of curiosity, let's try 2600. And we're going to have to let this cook for a minute. But you might be wondering, why 2600? Why did I decide on that? Within Gaea, if we go into our build menu, under here, under terrain definition, this is typically closed, so you just hit the little arrow to open it up. You can see that we have a height of 2600 and a scale of 5000. So that's our tallest peak is 2600 meters tall, and this entire region is about 5000 by 5000 meters. So let's see if Houdini has caught up with us yet. Yep, there it goes. So yeah, you can actually see that that is very close. Well, I'm comparing that to my Unreal. Let's see. Yeah, very close. Maybe a little too tall, but we're going to leave it for now. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to throw down this convert height field node. What this node does is it actually converts the file that we are reading into usable geometry that we can then manipulate and affect, select polygons of whatever we want. It is going to split all of it into like even polygons in a grid layout. You're not going to run into a ton of super weird polys and such. Let me zoom in to kind of show that. Yeah. So it's all in a grid layout like this. Now, from here, what I did was I poly split. And the purpose of this poly split, it's going to take a second to catch up, but that's okay. The purpose of the poly split is to split it right down the middle on this axis, right down the middle on this axis. And the reason for that is that it allows us to have 4 equal quadrants in each corner, which will then allow us to take this into a UDIM tile workflow. Now, this workflow I was not able to get working on my end. A lot of the video tutorials and such and other documentation that I found was from exactly 3 years ago. And all of those tutorials from 3 years ago are using a labs node that no longer exists in the version of Houdini that I have, which up here 20.0.724. So for that reason, I am just kind of going over how to get it set up to start working with UDIMs. I'm not going to go too much more into depth from there, but I will show you what one of these groups looks like, just so you can see, even on this UV view here, it's exactly one corner. So we're going to let that catch up, and then I'll get back with you. There we go. Now, from here, I'm going to show you how to bring this into Unreal. In Unreal, we don't quite have the same concerns with UDIMs and stuff like that as we have other tools that we can utilize due to the fact that it's a game engine. So, Unreal, how do we get to this? We're going to come up here. We're going to select Landscape. We're going to hit Manage, New, Import from File. Now, I already have my file selected from when I was doing this previously, and I already have my scale corrected. So, you just hit the 3 dots. That's where you can select your file. Just navigate to your folder. In this case, I am using my Unreal output. I covered in the first video the difference between the normal output and the Unreal output. If you want to use these Unreal specific output, you will need a license for Gaea. The community version does not, unfortunately, have that node, to my knowledge. So, from there, to correct the scale, it's a very simple math equation. So it's 100 because our default value here is 100. We then multiply that by 5,000. We're getting that 5,000 from the scale here in Gaea. And for the z-axis, we're going to use this 2600. So you'll see that in just a moment. So 100 times 5,000. And then we are going to divide that by the resolution of our map, which in this case we're using a 4K map, which in Unreal Engine is a 4033 by 4033 map. So a slash for division, 4033. And that will also then, of course, modify our y-axis, because in Unreal Engine you have x, y, then z. Our z-axis, again, we have 100 by default. Multiply that by 2600 from Gaea. And then we're going to divide that by 512. Now, this 512 comes from Unreal Engine's sort of like default world max height kind of thing. You can get outside of that number very easily, very quickly, but that's sort of the baseline starting point. And this information comes from another video that I came across and utilized. That video is both in my written documentation on my website, as well as linked down in the description if you'd like to check out their video and support them. And there we go. That's what it's going to look like after. Now, we can already tell, if I bring this back down and kind of overlay it a little bit, you can already tell this is way more flat, especially if we compare it to our Gaea model here. It is way more flat. So same thing as Houdini, we're just going to kind of art direct this and modify it until it kind of looks like what we want. So in this case, around 1360 is nice. I'm just going to make that a nice round number. I'm going to leave these two alone since they're based off of math that I know works correctly. Yeah, so after that, all we got to do is hit import. So before I get too into texturing of the environment and stuff like that in the next video and end off this one, I do want to show you real quick an example of texturing that you can use just from Gaea and some of the limitations that that has, as well as the difference of scale corrections and such. So let me go ahead and disable these guys. There we go. Now, this is a smaller area that I used here. This is based off of the quads here for section size, and then the math to actually kind of correct the scale like I was showing before. Let me go back to selection for this just so you have a nicer view. This is using the sat map coming right out of Gaea. Now this is from a different height map that I was experimenting with, so this sat map looks a little bit different. But the idea is that you export this sat map, you import it into your Unreal Engine the same way you would your height map, which, to clarify, you need to have in your content folder down here, which mine, oh, there it goes. Yeah, so I put it into a folder that I titled Imported Gaea. There's the EasyFog plugin that I mentioned that I'm using. The limitations of this, you can tell the quality and the difference of color and everything is not that great. What this is more useful for is, if it's further away, so if we get like this far, looks pretty nice. I think, you can see some of the detail of the little channels here and the way that water has cut away at this landscape. So say, your character or your camera or whatever is down over here looking at this environment. The quality is good enough then that it can be used to help obscure your horizon lines, stuff like that. Give the illusion that this environment is much larger than it is without having to worry about bringing an environment like this into Substance Painter or some other software to texture it and create a new map. You can just do it all within Gaea, import it all at the same time, and be done. You know what I mean? Unless, of course, it's going to be closer to your camera. For that, you're going to want to use landscape material, which I will sort of discuss in the next video a little bit. But regardless of that, it could also be better to just use static meshes. Within Gaea, you also have the option of exporting a mesh using a mesher. And what this does is, instead of it creating that black and white height map image, it'll actually just export as an FBX or XYZ point cloud, wavefront OBJ. So you have a couple different options there. You can set your vertex count. Yeah. So that's another way of utilizing this. Maybe, if you're going to have a ton of mountains or something, this will be a better way to approach it for the use of obscuring your horizon lines and stuff like that. Anyway, this has been my quick video on how to import these height maps into Houdini and Unreal Engine. I hope these have been helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments, or feel free to contact me through my website. I'm more than happy to answer questions and receive any feedback that you have. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video where I'll be discussing Unreal Engine 5 environment texturing and some foliage tips and tricks. Thank you guys.